Well, aside from the knots in this vintage cedar that I have that was rescued from being a discarded power pole, um, I wanted to kind of show you how nice this is. And so you can see it's, um, now I've planed it down, and I've also used a hand plane, but look at that beautiful, tight, straight grain. Um, look how smooth that has planed down with a hand plane. Just perfectly square and smooth. And pretty neat. This little, 3-inch piece. You can see how tight those rings are. Just unbelievable, unbelievably tight, and you can see just the very shallow arc, which of course means this was a really large circle. So very big tree that was harvested, in probably the late 30s, as it went into the ground as a power pole in 1941. But anyhow, you can, just really see, I think in this 3-inch piece, there are 43 growth rings. So that's just in its, probably, maybe a quarter of its radius here. 43 rings. So it's a pretty old tree in itself, before it was, cut down to be put into the ground as a power pole. And just by contrast, I have a piece of scrap yellow pine, which you can see those growth rings here are, I don't know, 10 times wider. So just a very different, growth pattern for these trees. The cedar must, grow quite slow and, take a lot of time to mature. Whereas the, yellow pine here has, grows super fast. So you can see kind of why I'm excited to use this reclaimed lumber. Though it's got a lot of issues with it. It's got some checks, and it's got some, lots of knots. So, and you can see this is just a shaving off my hand plane when I smoothed out that top edge. And, it's all intact and just a nice smooth, slice. That's probably, 100th of an inch thick. Maybe thinner. So I'm really excited to use it. I do think I'm going to have some issues with it. I know because of the lengths, I'm going to have to scarf them anyhow. So my original thought was to cut out the knots, replace them with graving pieces, and then, cut the strips. But I think since I'm going to have to scarf, probably at least twice per, plank length, I think I'm just going to cut the strips straight out of this, and then, deal with the knots and the checks, on a per, strip basis. Now, what would be nice to do with this, and in general, if I had thick enough stock, and I may go back and get some more, but if I had thick enough stock like this one, which is 1.25 inches thick, or it's maybe slightly smaller than that now that I've planed it down, I could take my strips along the grain line, and just go at about a 5/16 inch strip, time after time after time. But since I have, the majority of these boards are thinner, They're, substantially so, right? And I want to have some uniformity in the strips that I make. I think that what I'm going to do is, in all cases, I'm going to cut them about an inch wide instead of 5/16. And then I'm going to take that inch wide piece and stand it on its end, and then cut. In this case, I'll cut 2 out, and then there'll be a little bit of waste left over, very tiny bit, because of course the saw blade is going to take some waste in itself. But anyhow, I should be able to get 2 strips out of each 1-inch rectangle that I cut. And then with this wider board, I think I will be able to get 3 strips per each 1-inch strip. So because it's so knotty, I'm hoping to get maybe 30 clear strips that are 8 to 9 feet long each. And then I'm gonna do a lot of scarfing, because of course 8 to 9 feet I need about a 17-foot plank. So I'm gonna take the longest boards and or strips and scarf them together, so that I have as few scarves as possible in those. And then I'll take the shorter strips and hopefully not have to do more than 2 to 3 scarves per plank. And of course, as you work up the hull of the boat, you're going to start with your longest strips at the shear line and work your way up. And at the water line, those strips are going to then start to become somewhat shorter, and all the way to the center of the boat they'll be even shorter yet. So I do hope that I will be able to get most of what I need out of this pile. I do think I might have to go see Mike to see if I can get a few more of these boards, but I'm going to see what I can get out of it right now, and then hopefully not have to go buy a whole lot more. I think what I'm going to need is about 60 strips for the entire breadth of the hull, and I'm not sure I can get all of that out of here. Now, there's a lot of ways to mill this lumber into those strips, and I think probably what's going to be the safest is to use my bandsaw. So a lot of people will do these on a table saw, and ripping boards on a table saw is fairly easy and straightforward. But I do have a bandsaw that is going to make it a lot easier and safer, I think. So I'm gonna, it's just a small bandsaw. It's a 14-inch bandsaw, really nice Laguna bandsaw that I bought, maybe 10 years ago, or a little less. And it's got a nice firm fence on it. And so I think what I'll do is you can see this is a very narrow blade here that's on it currently. And that'll cut it, but it would cut it, kind of roughly, as the board moved around a little bit, and that little blade, has some deflection. And so I will change it, I think, to this, what's called a Resaw King blade. And you can see, of course, that's, a much, much wider blade. And that blade is designed to resaw the strips, which is what I'm going to do as I, flip them onto their edge and run them through at that 5/16 width. And that should give me, because it's designed to do resawing, a fairly smooth finish on the strips. Once those are, cut, I will scarf them together, and we'll go through that process and get the full length that I want. And of course, those will be 5/16 of an inch thick, which is a 1/16 of an inch thicker than, a 1/16 of an inch thicker than what I'm actually going to look for. Those strips will look something like this. Okay. So those will then, be scarfed, and that scarf joint will probably raise up just slightly above the surface, so it'll be a little bit of a hump on both the top and the bottom. And I will then use a hand plane just sort of to knock off that hump, and then I'll run them through my planer, like you saw earlier. And with that, you'll take them down to their final thickness of 1/4 of an inch, and they should be beautiful and smooth. And those scarves should be, somewhat unnoticeable. You probably will see a change in the grain a little bit at each scarf, but they'll be largely unnoticeable, and we'll be at our final width, and then we'll be able to apply our bead and cove at the router table, and then we'll be ready to strip a hull. Well, I'm not getting a whole lot of use out of my rescued cedar. I'm starting to strip it, and I'm using the bandsaw to do that. And of course, my bandsaw broke, so I think one of somehow the blade started going a little bit wonky, and then it kind of lunged forward a little bit and clipped one of the ceramic guides, broke it, and shattered the blade. So it's a $175 blade, so it's really a bummer, but it is what it is. So when I get both my new ceramic guides and a couple of new blades, less expensive blades this time, we'll see if they hold up, and I won't be as heartbroken if they break. But anyhow, got to wait on that before I can get more done. We did get some strips, and so here's some of the longer ones, which aren't very long at all. They're about 8 or 9 feet, and then here's a pile of the shorter ones that are 2 to 4 feet, I guess. So we'll do some scarfing, but I think ultimately I'm not going to be able to use or make the entire boat from this lumber. So, and here's a bunch of the offcuts, things that I just couldn't use. I couldn't find any lengths of real clear lumber to strip. So I got a bunch of offcuts. One thing I was really finding throughout this as I was cutting is you'll see this type of thing running throughout the boards, and sometimes the entire length. Same with those little checks. You don't think a lot of those little checks, but a lot of them run very long through these old boards, and certainly these do, and basically makes that section of the lumber unusable, because it'll just split right in your hands. No way it's going to be able to flex in a boat. So I'll probably figure out some other use for this remaining cedar, but it's not going to go on the boat. So I'm off to look for more better quality cedar. And better quality, I mean, this would be certainly very lovely in a lot of different decorative projects that require knotty wood, or things like Adirondack chairs is certainly perfect for that. But for this use where you need long clear sections of wood, it's just not gonna do. So on a new quest to find different lumber, and hopefully that'll line up with my my arrival of my new blades and guides.